Greetings from BB Max.
And welcome to our show.
Now, today we're going to talk about what made and makes America great. And what made and makes America great are the principles that our country was founded upon. Now, these principles have been floating around in Europe for a while. And what was that called? What time period was that called?
The Enlightenment.
Yes. It was people were, I think Copernicus started it pretty much, saying that no, the sun doesn't revolve around the earth, it's the other way around, right?
People always thought that, they thought that the sun went around.
Yes, and he said no, he actually proved that, and it got people thinking about other things and saying, what about this and what about that? And natural law, and they said, yeah, you know what? When you drop something, it always falls. It doesn't hang in the air sometimes. Things always fall. There are certain things that always happen. That's kind of sort of natural law.
Well, Isaac Newton did the gravity thing.
Yes, Newton did the gravity thing. Yes, that wasn't Copernicus. No. But scientists started experimenting to try to figure out why things happened in certain ways, and not just go with the myths and common beliefs of things back then. And then people started thinking, what about the divine right of kings? Where did that come from?
Is that really God's will? And they're like, no, it's not.
Right, exactly.
It's just them wanting to be in power.
Yes, the love of money, not necessarily, money was involved, but power and control. The love of power and control can be very addicting. And that was a huge problem back then.
That was a big part of it.
Yes, and the same with the Catholic Church. They were too many people in the Catholic Church were more about power and control than actually doing what they should have been doing, helping people. So people started thinking about that, and there's a whole lot of ideas swirling around in Europe, but the people that were in control then, the kings, they're not going to say,
squashed it. They didn't want that going on.
They didn't want that, yes. And then the invention of the printing press was huge, because now people could print things.
That got the word out to people.
Exactly, and that's what people started to think about things like that.
And it couldn't get changed by someone changing how they said it. It was there and written down.
Right. And so the word got spread around but people really couldn't do much of anything because the kings and the royalty, they were still in control. So that brings us to our country, where the founders were thinking about all of these things, and they were a little upset with King George III with the way he was running things. Parliament was passing laws that affected Americans, but we had no say in it. No taxation without representation, and no laws.
That's what was going on, was taxation without representation.
Yes, yeah.
That's why they had the Tea Party.
Yeah.
Since they said,
yes.
Threw all the cases of tea off.
Into Boston Harbor, yes. Yeah. So anyways, that's where the principles that our country was founded upon came from. And this is known as natural law. And what is natural law?
Law that should be known anyway, that it's wrong to kill and steal, stuff like that. It should be known from your conscience.
Oh yeah, it is known, right, exactly. It's you don't have to write that down. It's in here, in your conscience, and that's good that you mentioned that. Too many people today are not consulting their conscience enough. They're just kind of pushing it to the side and saying, well, everybody else kind of is and everything. That's part of the reason why we're in the terrible trouble we're in with people doing stuff.
Yeah, because people keep saying,
Yeah, yes.
I'm going to do what I want anyways.
Yeah, it just, it's not good. So we all everybody needs to consult your conscience more often, and that will help you to live by the golden rule as well. And then think of it, the golden rule is, you treat people the way that you would like to be treated yourself is basically how it goes.
Yes.
And if you think about it, that's great, that treating others the way that you'd like to be treated yourself makes sense.
That's how it should be.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But unfortunately, natural law itself, your conscience is not enough for civilized society to thrive. unfortunately. You get people, love of money, power, and control
Yep.
overcomes their conscience.
We haven't had the
overpowers-
written law.
Right, the written law. And so the founders of our country were basing it on natural law. And we've got a little thing here from the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, all right here. That's not very big, folks. You should read them. Read them. It's very, very interesting, very important. Anyway, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And that's what it was all about. Because with the kings, he didn't have to have consent from people. He was the king.
Oh yeah, he didn't care what you thought. He just
or
said, "No, you're going to do this, and that's it."
Yes, or sometimes the queen. There was queens.
That's
that,
all
yeah.
the ones in
Right.
charge. Yeah.
Yes, the ones in charge. They said that, and but there was some things. Now, America is a great country, not perfect. One of the worst aspects of that was slavery. But unfortunately, there's been slavery amongst humanity since the beginning, right? Pretty
Since
much.
early on, anyways.
Yeah. Yes, it's horrible, terrible, horrible. And the founders knew that. They knew that it was bad.
And that's not living by the golden rule at all.
No, not at all. No. And a lot of the founders they understood this, but they just kicked the can down the road. It's a little easier to do. They say, I know it's bad, but I really can't do anything about it. They kicked the can down the road for far too long. And it ended up having the Civil War. That was the only way that we could solve that problem, was the Civil War. The can got kicked down the road far too long. But one of the things people, why didn't they free the slaves? By the time they started figuring all of this out, I believe in certain parts of the southern part of our country, there were more slaves than free people. And if you freed all the slaves, what could they do? That was the problem. They couldn't figure out, what can the slaves do? How can we do this? They just couldn't figure it out, unfortunately. It's very, very sad, but it took the Civil War to do it. But we did it.
Yeah, I don't understand how they couldn't have given them jobs, but I don't know.
It didn't. It didn't happen. It didn't make economic sense for them to do it, I guess. I don't know. Whatever it was, it can't change that. But one thing that King George would not do, he would not stop the slave trade. They asked him to do it. They wanted, the founders and people in our country wanted King George to stop the slave trade, but he refused to do it. There was too much money for him involved, too much money for Britain at the time. And eventually the British Navy did stop slavery. They went, that was one of the major missions of the British Navy, was stopping the slave trade, the international slave trade, which was great. But back then, way back, he didn't do it. Anyway, so ours was the first government to specify in writing the duties and responsibilities of officials. You had all these people talking about things like this during the Enlightenment, but as we said,
No, it wasn't done at that time, but
Right.
in our country, when they wrote it down, they say, this is how it's supposed to be, and not like forcing people and not suppressing them or anything. It's just having the laws, and otherwise they're doing good, then they can work and they can have a house and they can own land
right?
and thrive.
Yeah.
Live their lives.
But yeah, everything was specifically written in writing, the duties and responsibilities of the government and government officials. Now we get to, after the Revolution, the founders determined that the Articles of Confederation were not strong enough to hold us together as a country. There was just, each state had too much power, and we were arguing back and forth and things, and it just wouldn't hold together as a country. So they had the Constitutional Convention in 1787. That was held in Philadelphia, in Independence Hall, I believe it was. And what was one thing that they didn't have back then?
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning, and they kept all of the windows closed in Independence Hall while they were debating this for 3 or 4 months.
They wanted to keep it all contained so there weren't any eavesdroppers or people spying or whatever and trying to listen.
Right, but imagine that, Philadelphia in the summer with no air conditioning and the windows all closed, and yet they got it done.
That was a good motivation to get it done.
Get it done, right, exactly.
Fashion.
Yeah. But there was people, it was basically the people from, the representatives from the larger states had ideas, and the smaller states said, oh, you guys are getting too much power. And there were people that wanted a stronger central government and people that said, no, we want more states' rights. So that it wasn't liberal and conservative, but there was a lot of that. Those were the divisive things back then. But instead of doing this, and there was some of this, they did this. They got together. They worked together. So again, it's not liberals and conservatives beating each other up, but basically that's what it was. Instead of doing this, there were some, but they got together and they got it done. They came up with our Constitution, written document, and it's been solid since then. Unfortunately, there are other countries in the world, especially like in Latin America, I think they have like 3, 4, 5 constitutions. Somebody comes along and gets in power and doesn't like the Constitution, he rips it up and says, let's start another one. That doesn't work too well. Oh,
that's
yes.
not good.
No, not good at all. But so it worked out well. It's worked out well. We aren't perfect, haven't been perfect, but it's working very well. Now, other countries, as I said, other countries have tried this. In France, they were very happy with what we had done, they saw what we had done, and defeating Great Britain. That was the most powerful country in the world at the time. And the French people saw that. They ended up having their own revolution shortly after we had ours.
But then their people like the control and the power, and so that made it so it didn't work because they had the love of power and control again.
Yes, the people that did that. They actually had the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which was sort of similar to our Declaration of Independence. It laid out the rights of people to have and everything, and that was a great start. But as you were saying, the love of power and control, the people that
can't have that. That's what wrecks everything.
And it ended up being that I think there were people that wanted to bring the monarchy back. And there were some people that said, okay, all the way back to where it was before, where the king was in charge and that was it.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. And some people were saying, well, bring him back, but limit what he can do. And other people said, no, get rid of him at all. And all they ended up doing was this. Bash and bash and bash.
That's why it didn't work.
Right. And it ended up becoming the reign of terror. People got to the point where they all said, oh, we better kill them before they kill us. That doesn't work too. Yes.
That's even worse.
Yes, the guillotine. Thousands of people were guillotined just because they were on the wrong side of whoever was in control at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, not good. Not good. So they tried, and then they ended up with Napoleon. That didn't work too well either.
Oh, geez.
No, but then they saw that, and they were still trying to emulate America, and they saw that we were doing fairly well. They weren't happy about the slavery, but they said, geez, at least they have a government of the people, by the people, for the most part. Of course, the slaves didn't count, but we were doing well. We were in a better situation than they were over there in that sense. And then they saw that we abolished slavery. That was huge.
Yes, that was huge, and it was great.
Yes.
Because it shouldn't have been happening in the first place.
Right. And that's what inspired them to give us the Statue of Liberty, because they saw that we had abolished slavery.
They wanted liberty to enlighten the world, and that's why they called it that. That's the actual title of it.
Yes, that's the actual title of this what everybody calls the Statue of Liberty. It's liberty enlightening the world. That's what they were hoping we could do, that we could lead by example and lead the world and have liberty enlighten the entire world. If you look on the Statue of Liberty, people don't see this because you're kind of looking up at it. But at the foot of the Statue of Liberty,
it has a broken chain and shackles.
Yes, yeah. And that's symbolizing that slavery was abolished. And that was a tremendous effort that they took to build that. It's, how tall is it? Do you remember?
151 feet.
Yes, yep. And they actually built...
And this was the citizens
that
of
paid
France,
for it, right.
not the government.
Yep.
They each pitched in a little bit, and it all gathered up, and then people in America pitched in for the pedestal for it to be on.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And Joseph Pulitzer, the publisher at that time, was called the World Newspaper of the World, something like that. He saw that they were having trouble raising money, so he started a campaign, and a widely advertised campaign, and he got the money together to build the pedestal. And then they had the, so they built it. They actually built it twice, right?
Yes, because they put it together over there in France, and then they took it apart and shipped it in crates, I guess.
Yes, it was in crates, yeah.
And then brought it all over here and put it together again.
Yes, yep. And that's it. Imagine that. Back then, this was in the 1880s, and they didn't have all the equipment that they have now with the tall cranes, with the steep, all those things there. That was built pretty much by hand. That was amazing.
They didn't have a lot of the stuff we have now, the equipment.
Yeah, yeah. So people have been trying to emulate our country for a long time. And another country that tried to emulate ours was
Vietnam.
Yep, yes. The Vietnamese Declaration of Independence in 1945, shortly after World War II, after the Japanese had been defeated, Ho Chi Minh wrote the Declaration of Independence for Vietnam, and he based it on our Declaration of Independence. And he went to the United Nations, the beginning of the United Nations, and he was hoping that they would say, okay, yeah, France, no, you gotta give this up to let them have their independence. Didn't happen that way, and he was kind of not very happy about that at all. And the United States sided with France in that situation and said, yeah, no, France, you keep it as a colony. And he was like, what? Is the Statue of Liberty standing on her head? He couldn't understand why.
Yeah, it's kind of going against,
right,
opposite, whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. And he was very upset about that. Unfortunately, it didn't work out too well for Vietnam. He didn't follow through on the principles, even less so than we have done, and it ended up being a dictatorship. I believe he was the dictator for Vietnam for quite some time. It didn't work out very well for them, but people have tried to do that. And unfortunately, the love of money, power, and control overpowers the conscience of people that are in control, that are in charge of things, and that's what you get, right?
Yeah, it's just not a good thing at all.
So that's why it's important for people to consult your conscience and pay attention to it and live by the golden rule. And that's what we're trying to do here. And America has become the land of opportunity because of with the principles we're founded upon. People come here and they say, wow, I get an opportunity to make a better life for my children and my children's children. And that's the land of opportunity.
They can earn money and buy a house and own land.
Right.
And be able to clothe their kids.
Yes, and back then,
feed
back
them.
in the 1800s, where people were coming from, they didn't have those opportunities. People were stuck in the kind of the rut of what their father had done and what their father's father had done and things like that. But here, you could do whatever you wanted to do, pretty much. And that's why it's the land of opportunity. And a melting pot, because people came from all over, and cultures would mix and have different things going. It was great. Melting pot works very well.
People get married from different countries and they have these kids, and it kind of blends everybody.
Right, exactly, yes. Yes.
And to me, that's part of what makes America great, because people from different areas have different experiences and they come together and they can learn from each other. When they're working together,
yes,
they can learn from each other and do
yeah.
better and come up with better things.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Somebody might have an invention, somebody else might say, hey, you add this to it or do this, and make that invention even better.
Right.
And when they do that, that's the benefit of
Yes, yeah. So I really want people
diversity.
to do that. Yeah, sorry to cut you off there. We're trying to get people to understand that when you consult your conscience more and live by the golden rule more, things go a lot better. Instead of this, we have more of this.
This is better.
Happier people do better. Yes, it's very, makes sense, right?
It does,
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to mention, of course, too, the day that we met was the
luckiest
day of our lives. It really is. If you look at our logo, that was my brother took that picture. That's awesome.
Yes, he did.
It's really cool. And we've had ups and downs a little bit here and there, but
any relationship is going to have ups and downs.
But it really was the luckiest day of our lives, and we're very fortunate. We want to spread that around to help people. It's it's really amazing what you can do when you can work together, and we've done that for 37 years, something like that.
Since 1986.
Yes, 1986. Yeah. And we want to spread that around. We're trying to get everybody in the world to learn to live together in peace.
And live by the golden rule.
And live in
a country whose government is truly of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yes. Now, people may say, oh, yeah, that'll never happen. And what is that kind of thought?
Oh, that's an automatic negative thought.
Yes, an automatic negative thought, an ant. And need to replace that with a pet, a positive, empowering thought. And that is, what can I do to help achieve this goal? And all you have to, one of the biggest things to do is to pay attention to your conscience. Consult your conscience more often and live by the golden rule. And that'll be a big help, a huge help. One small step for a person, one huge step for humanity. That'll be awesome.
That's true.
And again, get rid of the negative, automatic negative thoughts. And we have, and everybody knows that we need to do this. And they know that anybody can do it. But when they wait for somebody else to do it, who is that somebody else?
Oh, then nobody ends up doing it.
Nobody does it. And that's not good. So we need to do this. So please, people, help us do this. Help us to get everyone in the world to learn to live together in peace.
And live by the golden rule.
And live in a country whose government truly is of the people, by the people, for the people. Yes, yes, indeed. We can do this.
It's a lot better than arguing and stuff. That gets you nowhere.
Yeah. How much fun is this? Not much at all.
And it doesn't accomplish anything.
It doesn't accomplish anything. This is much better when people can work together. So let's do this, folks. Thank you.